My name is Madison Reed. I'm 34 years old. And until that Friday night, I thought silence was maturity. I thought staying calm meant I was strong. I thought swallowing little insults meant I was choosing peace. I thought love was supposed to be patient enough to survive comparisons. Even the quiet kind that slipped into conversations, like poison diluted in water. Then, my boyfriend leaned across a candlelit table and said, loud enough for strangers to hear, "Vanessa had better taste. This place is honestly sad." A couple at the next table stopped laughing. The waiter froze half a step behind me, and I finally understood that dignity does not always leave with a slammed door. Sometimes it leaves quietly. After the bill is paid, Evan and I had been together for about 18 months. We met through a work friend who insisted we would be perfect for each other. He was a paralegal. Sharp. Articulate. Handsome in that polished way that made people assume he had his entire life organized. I was a civil engineer. Practical. Steady. The kind of woman who owned 2 good blazers, kept emergency jumper cables in her trunk, and believed expensive did not automatically mean better. At first, Evan said he loved that about me. "You're real," he would tell me, resting his head on my shoulder while we watched movies on the couch. "You don't try to impress people." I believed him. Maybe that was my first mistake. We moved in together after a year. Split rent. Split bills. Built grocery lists on the fridge. Bought a second bookshelf because my technical manuals were taking over the office. It felt ordinary in the best possible way. Like we were building a life that didn't need to glitter to matter. But Vanessa came up sometimes. His ex-girlfriend. They had dated for 3 years, and had broken up about 6 months before he met me. From what Evan told me, Vanessa worked in finance, made excellent money, wore designer suits, and took him to restaurants where the menu didn't list prices. He always framed it like he had outgrown that world. "She tried to buy affection," he said once, rolling his eyes. Everything was about status. But his voice changed when he talked about her. Not much. Just enough. A softness at the edges. A little pause before certain memories. Like he wanted me to think he was criticizing that life, while secretly checking if I admired it. At first, the comments were small. Vanessa used to take me to this rooftop place downtown. The view was insane. She got me a watch once. Not like that one. Though, has was Swiss. We stayed at this resort in the mountains one winter. 5-star everything. Even the towels felt expensive. I told myself it was harmless. Everyone had a past. Everyone reminisced. I didn't want to be insecure. And I definitely didn't want to become the kind of girlfriend who flinched every time an ex's name came up. So I ignored it. But the comments started sharpening. If I suggested a casual brunch spot, Evan would say, "Kute." Vanessa hated places without valet. If I bought him a birthday gift I had actually thought carefully about, he smiled and said, "This is sweet. Very you. Very you. Not beautiful. Not thoughtful. Not perfect. Just very you." Like I was a smaller category he had learned to tolerate. Last Friday, I made a reservation at an Italian restaurant I had wanted to try for months. It wasn't fancy. It was family-run. Warmly reviewed. The kind of place with checkered tablecloths, low candles, and framed black and white photos on the walls. I thought Evan might appreciate something intimate. Something real. We arrived at 7. The moment we stepped inside, I knew he didn't like it. His eyes moved over the room, the narrow tables, the old brick wall, the handwritten specials board, with a polite little smile that never reached his face. "This is quaint," he said. I hung my coat over the back of my chair. I thought it looked nice. "The reviews are great." That was the first warning. We ordered. I got pasta with roasted garlic and mushrooms. Evan ordered chicken piccata then spent most of the meal pushing capers around his plate, like they had offended him personally. "Everything okay?" I asked. "It's fine. You're not eating much." "I'm just not hungry." "You said you were starving in the car." "Well, now I'm not." I should have listened to the tightness in my chest then. Instead, I took another bite of pasta and tried to make conversation. "Work. Weekend plans. A show we had been watching," he answered. But barely. At the table beside us, an older couple was celebrating an anniversary. The woman wore a navy dress and kept reaching across the table to touch her husband's hand. When the waiter brought them a complimentary dessert with a candle in it, they both laughed, like they were still surprised by each other. Evan watched them. Then he looked at our table, at my half-empty wine glass, at the breadbasket, at the little ceramic bowl of olive oil between us. And then he leaned forward. "Vanessa had better taste," he said. "This place is honestly sad." Not whispered, not muttered, said, clearly. A few people heard it. I saw the anniversary couple's smiles falter. I saw the waiter glance down like he wished the floor would open. I put my fork down. For a second, I stared at Evan, waiting for shame to cross his face. Waiting for him to realize he had said something cruel. Waiting for the man I thought I loved to come back into the room. He just sat there, arms crossed, watching me, waiting for me to break. I didn't. Noted. I said. Then I raised my hand and asked the waiter for the check. Evan blinked. "What are you doing?" "Leaving. We haven't finished." "You haven't?" "I have." The waiter came quickly. Too quickly. He had felt the tension before either of us named it. I paid cash, left a decent tip, and stood up. Evan's face flushed. "You're seriously going to leave me here?" I put on my coat. "You have your phone?" "Madison. You can call an Uber." I paused, looking at him fully for the first time since the comment. "Or Vanessa. Since she has such great taste." Then I walked out. He called after me once. Maybe twice. I didn't turn around. The cold air hit my face like water. I got into my car, gripped the steering wheel, and sat there for a moment while the restaurant glowed behind me. Warm and golden, and not sad at all. Then I drove home, and when I got there, I did something I had been thinking about for longer than I wanted to admit. I opened our bedroom closet and packed a duffel bag. Not everything. Just enough. Clothes, toiletries, work shoes, my favorite sweater from the top shelf, the one Evan once said made me look comfortable. As if comfort were some kind of failure. Then I went into the home office. We kept our personal files in a metal cabinet by the desk. I found my folder and took everything: passport, birth certificate, social security card, bank statements, my copy of the lease, insurance papers, anything with my name on it. I put it all in my laptop bag. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. For the first time in months, that quiet didn't feel lonely. It felt honest. I took a notepad from the kitchen drawer and wrote one sentence, then crossed it out. I started again, taking some time to think about things. We'll be in touch about the apartment and splitting belongings. Don't contact me unless it's urgent. I left the note on the counter. Then I took my bags, locked the door behind me, and drove to a hotel 20 minutes away. My phone started lighting up around 9. "Where are you? Why are your clothes gone? What is this note? You're being ridiculous. Call me now. This is childish." "Madison." I didn't answer. I turned the phone face down on the hotel nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing my coat. That was when the anger finally came. Not loud anger, not dramatic anger, a slow, aching realization. He had embarrassed me in public, compared me to a woman from his past, made it clear that my choices, my effort, my way of loving him were not enough, and he had done it casually, like it was obvious, like I should have already known. I looked at my bags by the door, my documents, My clothes. My life reduced to what I could carry in 2 trips from the car. For a moment, I wondered if I was overreacting. Then I remembered the anniversary couple going silent. I remembered the waiter looking away. I remembered Evan's face after he said it. Not sorry. Not surprised. Just waiting to see how much disrespect I would accept. That answer, finally, was none. I turned off the lamp, lay down in the unfamiliar bed, and listened to my phone vibrate against the nightstand until it stopped. For the first time in 18 months, I did not explain myself. I slipped. I woke up Saturday morning to sunlight, pushing through the hotel curtains, and 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, 3 voicemails. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen. 18 months together. And somehow, the quiet after one night apart felt louder than every argument we'd ever had. I made coffee using the tiny machine in the hotel room and sat by the window before reading anything. The city looked normal. Cars moved. People walked dogs. A couple argued over a parking spot. The world had not ended. That realization helped more than I expected. Eventually, I unlocked my phone. The messages followed a familiar pattern. Anger, confusion, apology, more anger, then desperation. Where are you? What the hell is wrong with you? You packed clothes. Seriously, call me. You're acting insane. Madison. Answer me. I'm sorry if I upset you. This is ridiculous. Please call. The final message had arrived at 2:07 a.m. I get it now. You took your documents. You're actually leaving over one comment. I stared at that sentence for a long time. One comment, even now. After everything, he still didn't understand. Or maybe he didn't want to. I finally typed back. It wasn't one comment. The reply appeared almost instantly. So you're breaking up with me. I'm taking space. That's basically breaking up. Call it whatever you want. A few seconds passed. Then, you're being dramatic. Maybe. But I'm also being clear about my boundaries. What boundaries? I laughed quietly. Not because it was funny. Because I suddenly realized he genuinely didn't know. He had become so comfortable crossing boundaries that the existence of one surprised him. I typed carefully. The boundary where I don't spend years being compared to someone else. I wasn't comparing you. You literally compared me to Vanessa, in a restaurant full of people. That was one joke. No. I stared at the blinking cursor. Then I wrote what I should have said months earlier. It wasn't a joke. You meant it. And honestly, I'm not worried about the last 18 months. I'm worried about the next 18. And the 18 after that? Listening to how I don't measure up. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then nothing. For the first time, in a long time. Evan had no answer. I put the phone down. That day, I deliberately stayed busy. Gym, lunch, a movie, a walk through a bookstore. Anything except sitting in the hotel room, replaying the relationship in my head. But memories followed me anyway. At the gym, I remembered the hiking trip 6 months earlier. I had spent weeks planning it. Booked a cabin, mapped trails, packed supplies. The entire weekend Evan had compared it to a ski resort Vanessa once took him to, at lunch. I remembered my birthday. The necklace I'd chosen because it reminded me of a constellation my father used to show me as a child. Evan's response, "It's pretty." Vanessa preferred diamonds. Though, at the movie theater, another memory surfaced. A vacation brochure, a cruise advertisement, a beach resort. Always something better. Always somewhere else. Always someone else's version of enough. By 5 that afternoon, another text arrived. I talked to my mom. Of course he did. What does she think? She thinks you're being unreasonable. I smiled. Not because it hurt, because it no longer surprised me. That's her opinion. She said I should find someone who isn't so sensitive. Maybe you should. Several minutes passed. Then, is that what you want? I stared at the message. The answer should have been simple. But 18 months doesn't disappear overnight. Love doesn't evaporate because someone hurts you. Sometimes that's the worst part. You still love them while realizing you can't stay. Finally, I replied, I want someone who doesn't publicly humiliate me and then tell me I'm sensitive for being hurt. I didn't humiliate you. I looked at the screen. My fingers tightened around the phone. You compared me to your ex in front of strangers? What would you call it? No response. 2 hours later, another message appeared. I'm sorry. Short. Simple. Different. I didn't realize it hurt you that much. I read it 3 times. Then typed back, that's the problem. You didn't think about whether it would hurt me at all. The reply came quickly. So what now? You stay in a hotel forever, until you decide what you want. And I'm just supposed to wait. Do whatever you think is best for you. The conversation ended there, at least for the night. Sunday morning arrived gray and rainy. I slept later than usual. For the first time since moving out. I felt calm, not happy, not healed, just calm. I ordered breakfast from a small cafe near the hotel and headed downstairs. The lobby was mostly empty. A family checked out near the front desk. Someone rolled a suitcase toward the elevators. Then I saw him, Evan, standing beside the reception desk. The moment our eyes met, I knew he had been waiting. A knot formed in my stomach. Not fear. Exhaustion. He spotted me immediately and started walking over. His face looked different, less polished, less controlled. Like he'd barely slept. Madison. Isail. Evan. We need to talk. I looked toward the entrance. Rain tapped against the glass doors. I told you, I needed space. You've had 2 days. His voice was tight. That's enough. No. How long is enough? As long as I decide. He ran a hand through his hair. This isn't how relationships work. I laughed once. A humorless sound. Apparently, neither is respect. Several people nearby glanced in our direction. He noticed and lowered his voice. Can we go somewhere private? No. Why? Because every private conversation we've had about this ended with you explaining why my feelings were wrong. I didn't say that. I said something simpler. Nothing has changed. His expression hardened. I came all the way here. I didn't ask you to. You won't even listen. I've been listening for months. That landed. I saw it in his eyes. For a brief moment. Guilt flickered there. Then it disappeared. You're acting like I cheated on you. No. Then what? I met his chaza. The problem is that you don't respect me. His jaw tightened. I do respect you. I almost laughed again. Then explained the restaurant? Silence. Explained Vanessa. More silence. Evan. Every gift. Nothing. Every trip. His eyes dropped. Every restaurant. Still nothing. Every accomplishment. People around us were pretending not to listen. But they were listening. We both knew it. Finally, he spoke. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I know. That surprised him. What? I know you weren't trying to hurt me. I stepped closer. But you weren't trying not to hurt me either. The words hit harder than shouting would have. His face changed. The defensiveness cracked. For the first time. He looked genuinely shaken. I continued. You liked what Vanessa gave you? It wasn't like that. Then why do you keep bringing her up? I don't know. You miss that life. No. Then why am I constantly competing with it? I'm not making you compete. That's exactly what you're doing. My voice remained calm, steady, controlled, and somehow that made everything more devastating. I'm tired. Evan. His eyes reddened. I'm sorry. There it was again. The apology, only now it sounded real. Not because he suddenly understood, because he was finally afraid. I didn't mean it like that. I believe you. Then why are we here? Because intentions don't erase impact. A tear slid down his cheek. Then another. Real tears. Not manipulation. Not performance. Just grief. The realization that consequences had arrived. I love you. The words hung between us. For one terrible second. I wanted to run into his arms. I wanted him to become the man I thought he was. I wanted the last 18 months to mean enough to fix everything. But love and reality are not the same thing. I know. His face collapsed. Then please come home. Home. The word hurt. Because part of me still wanted to. But another part remembered every comparison. Every disappointment. Every subtle reminder that I wasn't someone else. I can't. Not ever. I swallowed. I don't know. How much time do you need? As much as I need. He stared at me. The answer clearly wasn't enough. Finally he nodded, slowly, defeated. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. Before stepping outside, he looked back one last time. Rain blurred the glass behind him. I really am sorry. Madison. I believed him. That was what made it so sad. Because sometimes an apology arrives after the damage is already done, and sometimes the person saying sorry isn't apologizing because they finally understand. Sometimes they're apologizing because they're finally afraid of losing what they took for granted. As I watched him disappear into the rain, a strange feeling settled over me. Relief. Not complete. Not permanent. But real? For months, I'd been trying to convince myself that what I felt wasn't happening, that I wasn't being compared, that I wasn't being diminished, that I wasn't slowly becoming less confident. Standing in that hotel lobby, I finally stopped arguing with reality. And once you stop arguing with reality, decisions become much easier. I just didn't know yet that the biggest confirmation was still coming, and that it would arrive from the last person I ever expected to meet, Vanessa. The following Monday, I went back to work. On the surface, everything looked normal. Blueprint reviews, project meetings, site inspection, emails piling up faster than I could answer them. I welcomed the distraction. The problem was that every quiet moment allowed my thoughts to wander back to Evan, not the relationship itself. The pattern, the constant feeling that I was competing against a memory that seemed to become more perfect every time he talked about it. By Wednesday, I had started looking at month-to-month rentals. The hotel was comfortable enough, but it wasn't a life. It was a pause. And eventually, pauses have to end. That afternoon, I received another text. I cleaned out your things from the bathroom. They're in boxes by the apartment door. If you want them? I stared at the message. There was no anger this time. No accusation. Just sadness. Thanks. I'll grab them this week. Several minutes later, are you planning to move out permanently? I haven't decided. The rent is due next Friday. I can't afford the apartment by myself. The guilt landed exactly where he intended. Not maliciously, just honestly. But I recognized it immediately. I'll pay my half this month. After that, we need to discuss options. You really are leaving. I'm saying we need to figure things out. This is messed up. I didn't answer. Because every version of that conversation ended in the same place. His fear of losing me. My exhaustion from being compared. Neither one fixed the actual problem. 2 days later, I went back to the apartment while I knew he would be at work. Pulling into the parking lot felt strange. Like visiting a place that used to belong to someone else. The apartment looked exactly the same. The same welcome mat. The same potted plant near the door. The same third-floor hallway. Yet somehow, everything felt different. Inside, several boxes waited neatly beside the entrance. Bathroom items, cosmetics, hair products, little pieces of a life we'd built together. I carried them to my car. Then I went back for a second trip. My tools from the garage, a few books, some kitchen items I had purchased myself, things that belonged to me before they belonged to us. Before leaving, I set my apartment key on the counter. Beside it, I left a note. Paid my half of rent. Let me know if you want to break the lease or find a roommate. I'm flexible. Then, I walked out. An hour later, my phone vibrated. Roommate. That's what I am to you now. I stared at the screen. Part of me wanted to soften the truth. Instead, I typed, "That's what it felt like lately." The response came quickly. "That's not fair." Maybe not, but it's honest. Several minutes passed. Then, "I miss you." The message hit harder than I expected. Not because it changed anything. Because I missed him too. The good parts. The early parts. The version of us before Vanessa became an invisible third person in every room. Finally, I replied, "I miss the version of us that existed before all the comparisons. Can we get back to that?" "I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm willing to work on it." I looked at the message, then typed the truth. "Working on it, starts with recognizing there was a problem. You spent 2 days telling me there wasn't one. I'm recognizing it now, because I left, not because you recognized it yourself. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Does that really matter? Yes, it does. No response came after that. And deep down, I knew why. Because he finally understood that apologies weren't the issue. Awareness was. The following week passed quietly. The texts became less frequent, less emotional, more cautious. As though we were both standing on opposite sides of a bridge neither of us knew how to cross. 3 weeks after the restaurant incident, something unexpected happened. Something that changed everything. I was sitting inside a coffee shop near my hotel. A rainy Thursday afternoon. Laptop open, half-finished cappuccino, trying unsuccessfully to focus on a drainage report. That's when I noticed a familiar face. At first I couldn't place her. Then I remembered photos. Pictures Evan had shown me months earlier. Vacation snapshots. Social media posts. The woman sitting alone near the window was Vanessa, his ex-girlfriend. For several seconds, I simply stared. Of all the people in the city, of all the coffee shops, of all the days, the coincidence felt ridiculous. I looked away, then looked back. Still here. My first instinct was to leave. My second instinct was stronger. I stood, walked across the room, and stopped beside her table. Excuse me. She looked up, confused. Hi. This is probably going to sound strange. Her expression immediately brightened with curiosity. I love strange. I laughed despite myself. Your name is Vanessa. Right. Now she looked surprised. Yes. I extended my hand. I'm Madison. The recognition arrived instantly. Oh. She blinked. Oh. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. Not mockingly, genuinely. Evans Madison. Formerly. Wow. She sat back in her chair. This is weird. A little? You want to sit down? I hesitated, then nodded. A few minutes later, she bought me coffee, which, somehow, made the situation even stranger. For the first 10 minutes, we talked about everything except Evan. Work, weather, the city. Then eventually, neither of us could avoid it anymore. Vanessa smiled. So? I nodded. So? What happened? I laughed softly. How much time do you have? She groaned. Oh no. The reaction caught my attention. What? She rubbed her forehead. Please tell me he didn't compare you to me. I froze. Vanessa saw the answer immediately. Oh my God. You knew. Her laugh held absolutely no humor. Madison. She leaned back. He did that. In a restaurant. Seriously? He said you had better taste. Vanessa covered her eyes. For several seconds she said nothing. Then, I cannot believe he's still doing that. Still. The word echoed in my head. Still. What do you mean? Vanessa lowered her hands. And suddenly looked tired. Very tired. Because for the first time since sitting down, she wasn't talking about her ex-boyfriend. She was talking about an old wound. When we were together, she said quietly. He compared me to the guy before me. I stared at her. What? She nodded. Constantly. The room seemed to tilt slightly. He'd mentioned things she did. You're kidding. I wish I were. Vanessa laughed bitterly. Apparently I wasn't adventurous enough. My chest tightened. Because the sentence sounded painfully familiar. He used to say she was more spontaneous. Vanessa pointed at me. Exactly. I stared, speechless. He compared me to you. And he compared me to her. We both sat there. The absurdity almost comical. Almost. Then Vanessa sighed. The problem was never who came before. What was it? She stirred her coffee slowly. Evan always wanted more. The sentence landed heavily. He'd enjoy something. She shrugged. Then a week later there would be something better. I felt a chill. Because I'd heard this story before. Just from the opposite side. A nicer vacation. She counted on her fingers. A bigger apartment. Another finger. A different city. Another. A different life. Then she looked directly at me. You know what finally ended us? I shook my head. I realized there was no finish line. Silence settled between us. Outside, rain slid down the cafe windows. I could have given him everything. Vanessa smiled sadly. And eventually it wouldn't have been enough. I thought about the restaurant. The comments, the gifts, the comparisons, the constant feeling of being measured. Measured. Never appreciated. Always evaluated. As though love were a performance review, Vanessa broke the silence. You know what's funny? What? I spent years thinking I was the problem. I laughed softly. Me too. For a moment we simply sat there, two women connected by the same story. Not rivals, not enemies, just witnesses. Eventually, I asked the question that had been bothering me. Do you think people change? Vanessa considered it carefully. Sometimes. Do you think Evan can? Another pause. Then, only if he wants to. That answer stayed with me. Not because it gave me hope, because it gave me clarity. People can change, but they cannot change because they're afraid of consequences. They have to change because they finally see themselves honestly, and I wasn't sure Evan had reached that point. When we eventually stood to leave, Vanessa smiled warmly. For what it's worth. I waited. You seem a lot happier than I was. I laughed. I'm living in a hotel, and yet somehow I still mean it. We exchanged numbers, promised to stay in touch, then went our separate ways. That night, I sat alone in my hotel room, thinking about everything she'd said. Eventually I picked up my phone and sent Evan a single message. I met Vanessa today. The response came less than 30 seconds later. You did what? I stared at the screen, then slowly smiled. Because for the first time in weeks, I wasn't questioning my reality anymore. And Evan was about to learn exactly why. The 3 dots appeared almost immediately, disappeared, appeared again. Then Evan finally responded. What did she say? I stared at the screen for a moment. Not because I didn't know how to answer, because I suddenly realized how much power that question held. 3 weeks earlier, I would have spent half an hour carefully crafting a response. I would have worried about his feelings. I would have softened the truth. Now I simply type, enough. Several seconds passed. Enough what? Enough to confirm that what I've been feeling wasn't unique to our relationship. His response came instantly. She's lying. I expected that. Why would she lie? Because she hates me. I leaned back against the headboard and shook my head. The old version of me might have argued. The new version didn't need to. What does she gain from it? Nothing. Another pause. Then, you don't know the whole story. Neither do you. What is that supposed to mean? It means you've spent years comparing people to each other and calling it honesty. Silence. I continued. She told me you compared her to the woman before her. 5 full minutes passed before his next message arrived. You talked about all that. Yes. The typing bubble appeared again, then disappeared. Then finally, maybe I did. I stared at those 3 words. Maybe I did. Not a denial. Not a defense. Just enough truth to crack the wall. I took a breath. Maybe. Another long pause. Then. Okay. I did. The admission felt strangely anticlimactic. Months of confusion. Weeks of questioning myself. And there it was. A simple confession on a glowing screen. Why? His answer took several minutes. I don't know. I read the message twice. Then a second one arrived. I always thought I was helping. Helping. By pointing out things I liked. By showing people what could be better. I closed my eyes. There it was. The misunderstanding at the center of everything. Evan genuinely believed criticism was guidance. Comparison was motivation. Dissatisfaction was improvement. The problem was that relationships don't survive when one person is constantly treated like a project. You're supposed to love people, not constantly upgrade them. I typed carefully. You weren't helping. You were making people feel like they were never enough. No response came. An hour later, a final message appeared. Maybe I do have a problem. Maybe. I stared at it, then answered honestly. I hope you figure it out. Another pause. Then, Does this mean we're really over? I looked out the hotel window. City lights flickered against the darkness. Cars moved below. Life continued. And for the first time, the answer felt obvious. Yes. Nothing came back. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not the day after that. The conversation was over. And somehow, so was the relationship. 2 months later, I signed a 6-month lease on a 1-bedroom apartment. Nothing fancy. No rooftop pool. No luxury finishes. No valet parking. Just a clean, quiet place with large windows and enough space for me. The first night there, I sat on the living room floor eating takeout because I hadn't unpacked my kitchen yet, and I felt happier than I had in months. Not because I was alone, because I was finally at peace. I moved the rest of my belongings out of the old apartment while Evan was at work. We coordinated through text. Short, civil, distant. The way strangers sometimes are, after loving each other, before leaving for the final time. I placed an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was my portion of the next month's rent, along with a note explaining that I had completed the paperwork necessary to remove myself from the lease. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. I can't believe you're actually doing this. We want different things. The response came immediately. I changed my mind about what I want. I stared at the screen. Maybe he believed that. Maybe he genuinely did. But something important had changed inside me. I finally understood the difference between regret and growth. You changed your mind because I left. That's not the same thing as changing. How do you know? I don't. But I'm not interested in waiting around to find out. Several minutes passed. Then. So you never really loved me. The message hurt more than I expected. Not because it was true. Because it wasn't. I answered honestly. That's not true. Then why? Because love isn't enough. If I don't feel respected, I respect you. I looked at the words. Months ago. They might have made me hesitate. Now they only made me sad. Maybe you do now. Because I left, that's regret. Not respect. That was the last meaningful conversation we ever had. A week later, I returned to the Italian restaurant. The same one? The supposedly sad one. This time I went with a friend from work. We ordered far too much food, laughed loudly, stayed longer than we intended. The waiter recognized me. I could tell, but he never mentioned the previous visit. Professional, kind, exactly what I needed. At one point, my friend asked the question. Everyone eventually asked, "Do you miss him?" I considered it carefully. Sometimes, the answer surprised even me, but mostly, I miss what I thought we could have been. My friend nodded. That's different. Yeah. And it was. I didn't miss the comparisons. I didn't miss feeling inadequate. I didn't miss wondering whether every gift, every dinner, every decision would somehow be measured against another woman's memory. I missed the possibility, not the reality. A few weeks later, I attended a mutual friend's birthday party and saw Evan for the first time since the breakup. He stood across the room talking to someone, a woman I didn't recognize. Beautiful, elegant, wearing an expensive dress. For a moment, I simply watched, waiting to feel something: jealousy, anger, regret, anything. Instead, I felt nothing. Not coldness, not bitterness, just absence, like touching a scar that no longer hurts. We nodded politely at each other from across the room. Nothing more. Later that evening, our mutual friend approached me. You okay? Yeah. He asked about you earlier. I laughed softly. Did he? Said he hoped you were doing well. I nodded. That's nice. My friend hesitated, then lowered his voice. For what it's worth? I think you made the right choice. I smiled. Thanks. He glanced toward Evan, then back at me. He's already doing it again. What? The comparisons? I laughed before I could stop myself. Of course. Apparently he'd mentioned that an ex-girlfriend me used to know better cocktail bars. The irony was almost too perfect. I shook my head. Some people never learn, or maybe they learn slowly. Either way, it wasn't my responsibility anymore. That realization felt liberating. Standing in that crowded room, I understood something important. The thing I took with me from that restaurant wasn't my clothes. It wasn't my documents. It wasn't even my apartment key. The most important thing I took was my self-respect. For months, I had allowed myself to be measured against someone else, compared, evaluated, found lacking. Not because I actually was lacking, because I kept participating in the comparison. The moment I walked out of that restaurant, I stopped participating, and everything changed. Looking back now, I don't think the restaurant was where the relationship ended. I think it ended much earlier. Every time Evan compared me to Vanessa, every time I told myself it wasn't a big deal, every time I accepted something I shouldn't have, the restaurant was simply the moment I finally saw it clearly. I'm 34 now, single, living alone, slowly rebuilding the confidence I didn't realize I had been losing. And if there's one lesson I carry forward, it's this. When someone constantly compares you to another person, they aren't really seeing you. They're seeing a competition, a fantasy, a scoreboard. Love can't survive there. Respect can't survive there. Neither can self-worth. The restaurant wasn't sad. The relationship was. And the thing that finally stopped everything wasn't leaving the table. It wasn't moving into a hotel. It wasn't meeting Vanessa. It was the moment I decided I was worth more than being someone's second choice. Worth more than being measured against a memory. Worth more than constantly trying to prove I was enough. Because I was enough, I always was. The only person who couldn't see it was the man who kept looking backward. As for me, I'm done competing with ghosts.